The service history of the Japanese battleship Mutsu is characterized by the fact that the most famous event associated with this ship was its loss, while its operational period passed relatively quietly. This ship belongs to the Nagato class, which at the time of its launch was considered one of the most powerful in the world. A notable episode in the early history of the Mutsu was the risk of it being scrapped shortly after entering service. The ship officially joined the fleet on November 22, 1921. However, 10 days prior to this event, a conference on the limitation of naval armaments began in Washington. During negotiations, foreign delegations, particularly representatives of the United States, insisted on scrapping the Mutsu as part of the fleet reduction program. Since the battleship was new, the Japanese side looked for ways to save it. One of the arguments in defense of the ship was the claim that funds for its completion had been partially collected by schoolchildren in 1920. There are differing opinions regarding how significant this financial contribution was and whether this claim was a propaganda move, but the ship was successfully defended. Instead of the Mutsu, the obsolete battleship Setsu was sent to be scrapped. Until the mid-1930s, the battleship's service proceeded routinely. The ship participated in gunnery drills, cruises, and the escorting of other vessels. As one of the largest ships in the fleet, along with the Nagato and the two Ise-class battleships, the Mutsu was used for ceremonial purposes. In particular, Emperor Hirohito visited the battleship twice, including during a naval review in Yokohama. In the mid-1930s, the ship underwent a large-scale modernization. The main changes concerned the propulsion system. The boilers were replaced with oil-fired ones, which allowed the number of smokestacks to be reduced from 2 to 1 thanks to space savings. The superstructure was significantly rebuilt and enlarged. The ship's displacement grew by almost 7,000 tons. This increase was due to the installation of an additional 3,000 tons of armor, primarily horizontal, and the mounting of anti-torpedo bulges, which increased the hull width by 13 feet. Before the start of World War II, the only military conflict in which the battleship Mutsu was involved was the Sino-Japanese War, which began in the summer of 1937. This occurred a few months after the ship returned to service following the completion of modernization. The battleship's main activity during that period was limited to escorting transports and sorties to the Shanghai area, where its onboard seaplanes were used for strikes against enemy positions. Subsequently, the ship was placed in reserve for approximately a year. Due to rising tensions in relations with the United States, the battleship was brought back from reserve. After several short-term sorties into Chinese waters, immediate preparations began for the ship's participation in the upcoming war. At the outbreak of hostilities, the Mutsu and the Nagato were part of the First Fleet. After the battleship Yamato entered service, a reorganization of forces took place. The 1st Battleship Division, Yamato and Musashi, and the 2nd Division were formed, the latter including the Nagato, Mutsu, Fuso, Yamashiro, Ise, and Hyuga. The ships of the 2nd Division stayed together and were not initially intended for active use in line-of-battle engagements. During the campaign, the Mutsu participated in operations in the area of Truk Island. In particular, attempts were made to intercept American forces, including the escort carrier Long Island, delivering aircraft to Guadalcanal. The battleship operated as part of a force with Takao and Miyoko-class heavy cruisers, as well as destroyers, but the objectives were not achieved. The ship also formally participated in the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, but did not engage in firing contact with enemy surface forces. Actual combat application during the entire described period was limited to a few shots by anti-aircraft artillery against aviation. The ship was located at a significant distance from the main combat zones. The beginning of 1943 passed relatively quietly for the battleship. It was transferred to the Hashirajima anchorage, located deep in the rear within the inland waters of Japan. In the spring of 1943, special Sanshiki-Dan Type 3 anti-aircraft shells began to enter the ammunition load of battleships with large caliber guns, 16 to 18 inches. These munitions were a type of shrapnel filled with tubes containing a magnesium-based incendiary mixture and were intended to destroy aircraft through thermal effects in the blast zone. Due to the Japanese fleet's lack of radio fuses and the low efficiency of 25 mm and 5 inches guns against aviation, due to poor stability and accuracy, alternative measures were taken. 200 special shells were loaded onto the battleship Mutsu. Additionally, the main caliber ammunition load already contained 960 shells. Each main caliber shell weighed about 1 ton and contained a significant volume of explosive material. Similar munitions, modified 16-inch shells, were used as armor-piercing aerial bombs during the attack on Pearl Harbor, which indicates their high destructive power. On June 8, 1943, Mutsu was at the anchorage in Hashirajima Bay. Nearby were the battleship Fuso, several cruisers, and other ships. At that moment, a group of aviators was on board Mutsu, 40 instructors from a training air group, and 113 cadets, 153 people in total. The presence of the pilots was likely of an introductory nature. Due to the return of the battleship Nagato from exercises for which space needed to be cleared, Mutsu was supposed to change its mooring point. During preparations for the maneuver at 12:13 p.m. local time, an explosion occurred. The incident was recorded from the bridge of the battleship Nagato, located several miles away. Despite thick fog and visibility of about 550 yards, observers noticed a bright flash and a vast white cloud, after which the sound of a powerful explosion was heard. The battleship Fuso transmitted a message about the incident. Rescue boats from Fuso, the cruisers Mogami and Tatsuda, as well as from approaching destroyers, were sent to the site of the catastrophe. Arriving at the scene, rescuers discovered that the ship had broken in half in the area of the third aft turret. The bow section, about 560 feet long, sank almost instantly. The stern section, 165 feet long, capsized keel up and remained on the surface for some time. There is no information about a preceding fire. The nature of the destruction points to an instantaneous detonation. Out of a crew numbering nearly 1,500 men, according to various sources, about 350 were saved. Losses among the seconded pilots amounted to 140 people. 13 survived, which was a serious blow to naval aviation, which was experiencing a shortage of personnel in 1943. Immediately after the explosion, an anti-submarine alert was declared, but the penetration of a submarine into the guarded bay was considered difficult, and searches for a submarine yielded no results. On June 9th, divers began examining the wreckage. After assessing the condition of the hull, the command abandoned plans to raise the battleship. Subsequently, a decision was made to classify information about the loss of the ship from an internal explosion. The loss of the battleship was regarded by the command as a serious failure that needed to be hidden from the enemy. Despite the fact that by that time the role of battleships in combat operations had begun to yield to the importance of aircraft carriers. Of the survivors, totaling about 350 people, the majority did not have severe wounds. For the purpose of maintaining secrecy, they were distributed among various remote garrisons on the islands of Kwajalein, Truk, and Saipan. It is known that a group of 150 sailors sent to Saipan died during the assault on the island in 1944. Unprecedented measures were taken to conceal information. The family of the deceased ship commander was not informed of the location or circumstances of the crash for a year. Even the divers examining the wreckage were not informed of the name of the vessel, although they were provided with blueprints of a Nagato-class battleship for orientation within the internal compartments. The fact of the loss of the ship was successfully concealed for a long time. American intelligence began to receive fragmentary information only closer to the end of the war, after interrogations of prisoners on captured islands, however. Final confirmation of the loss of the battleship was obtained only after the surrender of Japan. Versions regarding an external attack from a midget submarine or a lone bomber found no confirmation. Neither the British nor the American sides claimed responsibility for the destruction of the ship. It is assumed that in the event of a successful operation, the enemy would inevitably have used this fact in the media. The investigative commission, which worked for several months, considered various causes of the disaster. The main version became the detonation of one of the incendiary anti-aircraft shells, indicated by the characteristic white smoke noticed before the explosion. However, during experiments, it turned out that these munitions do not detonate at temperatures below 176 degrees Fahrenheit, which cast doubt on the possibility of a spontaneous explosion under normal conditions. Despite the identified risks, these shells were subsequently returned to the ammunition loads of other ships. In addition, there was a version regarding the human factor. It was assumed that the culprit could have been a sailor caught stealing, who blew up the turret with the aim of suicide. The results of the work of the investigative commission did not give a definitive answer about the causes of the incident. In the official resolution, the cause of the explosion was listed as the human factor. In 1944 and 1945, attempts were made to raise the vessel, but it was not possible to accomplish this. Only about 600 tons of fuel were pumped out, which was an important resource in conditions of shortage. Post-war salvage operations, conducted including with the participation of American specialists, also did not meet with success. In the 1970s, the hull was scrapped. About 75% of the structures were dismantled for scrap metal, although part of the fragments likely still remain at the bottom of the bay. During the work, it was possible to raise a significant number of parts, in particular the gun barrel and the 140mm turret, a rare, possibly the only preserved specimen of this type, are now museum exhibits. Well-known archival photographs with torn-off turrets also document the condition of precisely this object. Despite the fact that the right to preserve the ship was defended during the Washington Conference, it did not take an active part in combat operations. A similar situation developed with the sister battleship Nagato. In general, the effectiveness of ships of this class in that period turned out to be lower than expected due to the dominance of aircraft carriers.